Global temperature dropped to minus 100 Celsius. There's no food, no water. People started eating each other. Someone with silent footsteps is creeping around with a bloody iron rod. This room, it's our boy, Han Feng. Suddenly, a cute female voice calls his name. Han Feng peeps through the hole and sees it was his school friend, Hyona. She was shivering in the cold, tears in her eyes, knocking on his door. Han Feng, blushing, immediately opens up. It's already deadly cold, but this heavenly sight is enough to get our virgin boy heated up. He tells her to come inside, saying it's dangerous and freezing out there. Now, that's how you turn a cold apocalypse warm. But midway, she suddenly grabbed the door and kissed our boy Han Feng. Before our boy could understand anything, she started playing with his mouth, and that continued for quite a few minutes. A bewildered Han Feng, wiping his drool from his mouth, questioned Hyona. What just happened? Why did she kiss him the second he opened the door? What's gotten into her? Hyona, with a seducing voice, whispered that she realized Han Feng was the only one she loved, and this was her confession. She continued in her seductive tone, saying that now the world is all messed up, everyone is showing their true colors, and only Han Feng is treating her kindly, giving her free food, water, and shelter, taking care of her. So, she realized Han Feng is the man of her dreams. But Han Feng was so shocked that he just froze on the spot, not responding. Hyona gently grabbed Han Feng's hand and placed it on her bouncy melons, whispering in his ear that if Han Feng didn't believe her, he could feel her heartbeat, and she was willing to do anything Han Feng wanted. This made the already shocked Han Feng go crazy, his body temperature surging high, thinking, what does she mean by anything? Han Feng was hesitating to make the first move. So Hyona made the move herself. With her leg, she started rubbing our boy's little pee-pee. And boy, oh boy, Han Feng started to vibrate like an old tractor's engine, like he would explode any time now. Han Feng tried to say something, but Hyona gently grabbed his face, whispering and insisting not to say a word. She requested Han Feng to close his eyes because she had a gift for him. As soon as Han Feng did, someone grabbed the door and, with all their might, smashed Han Feng's head. Blood continued to flood from Han Feng's head while the bitch and her real boyfriend checked out what goodies Han Feng had in his house. Meanwhile, Han Feng, lying on the deadly cold floor, started to go numb. He was unable to move his arms, his entire body, and slowly his vision became blurry. He couldn't believe this was the gift he got for being horny, but it wasn't the end. As Han Feng was left dying, Hyona and her real boyfriend started their melon-smashing game right in front of him. Han Feng couldn't believe what he was seeing. To him, they were live devils. Han Feng swore that in his next life, he would be an Ultra Max Pro Max Giga Chad. Then, suddenly, something strange happened. Through the darkness, Han Feng felt warmth and saw a ray of light. He somehow tried to get closer to the light, thinking it must be the path to heaven. But as soon as Han Feng touched the light, it turned red. And suddenly Han Feng's whole soul started to burn. It felt like his body was being shredded into pieces again and again. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, Han Feng woke up from the hell shouting, all covered in sweat and exhausted. The first thing he saw was the warm sunlight coming through the window. At that moment, Han Feng was in a state of confusion, sitting still like a statue. After about 30 minutes, Han Feng stood up, went to his balcony, and once again felt the warmth of the sun. He thought he would never feel this warmth again. Today's like goal is 3,000 likes. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. I am really grateful, and thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Now let's continue. After calming down a bit, Han Feng checked the date. It was June 28th, and the apocalypse started on July 15th. Although he was supposed to be dead, for some mysterious reason, he came back in time, 15 days before the apocalypse. Finally, Han Feng accepted the fact that he had been reborn, his desperate wish granted in his final moments. But it wasn't the end. There was something weird happening with Han Feng's body. Ever since he woke up, his right hand was continuously glowing red, and he didn't know how to stop it. It didn't hurt or anything. It was just a little warm, like a low-power heater. At first, Han Feng thought he was imagining things, but then, in the middle of his thoughts, he sneezed. As he wiped his nose of the mess, Han Feng noticed that the red glow in his right hand had mysteriously turned green. Then something happened that made him panic. The hand wrapped in the green glow started getting bigger, growing in length, as if his bones, flesh, and skin were stretching out. Anyone would freak out if they saw their hand doing that. Afraid and confused, Han Feng stormed into his room and slammed the balcony door shut as fast as he could. He managed to get inside before anything more drastic happened. Han Feng was so surprised and ran so fast that he was out of breath. Han Feng looked at his green glowing hand, beams of light shooting out of it. How would modern science even explain a mysterious phenomenon like this? It was troublesome enough that his right hand started glowing red, but now it was green. But suddenly, the green light started to shrink. The green light seemed to be an erratic thing. Sitting down on his couch, Han Feng suddenly felt a pang of unbearable exhaustion. He hadn't done much aside from running back inside, but he felt he had shaken his little pee-pee 10 times a day. Frustrated, he started swinging his arms all over the place, trying to get a clue as to what this really was. Then it hit him. Isn't this just like the stories he loves to read? He immediately sprinted to the kitchen and grabbed his sharpest knife. In those animes he loves, the protagonist always starts their stories by being reborn just like them. Maybe he would gain cheat-like powers. He wanted to test this out by grabbing his kitchen knife, thinking it might become a legendary weapon. But after a few minutes of waiting for something to happen, anything to change, Han Feng just scratched his head in shame as the sharp knife did not react with the light in his hand at all. He was so busy trying to find out if he had some fantastic cheat-like powers that he neglected his exhaustion and the rumbling of his stomach. He was just starving at this point. Unfortunately for him, the Han Feng of the past, clueless about the coming apocalypse, was a lazy bastard who didn't even have a single piece of edible food in his fridge. This was getting bad. He had never felt so hungry before. If he didn't eat something soon, he would probably pass out any second now. He turned his attention to the living room, where a clear jar of soybean snacks was just sitting quietly. These roasted soybeans were just some leftover snacks he got before the apocalypse. It wasn't exactly a complete and filling meal, but it would have to do for now. It should tide the hunger before he hits up the supermarket later. He grabbed one of the roasted soybeans, unconsciously using his right hand, momentarily forgetting that it had the mysterious green light wrapped around it. Han Feng was too hungry to think of anything else, so he tossed the soybean right into his mouth. But bam! Suddenly the soybean exploded in Han Feng's face, making the area all smoky. As the smoke cleared, there was a freaking whole fresh pea plant in Han Feng's mouth. He could feel the roots on his tongue, and the stalk itself extended outward. He pulled it out, and the plant left an earthy taste in his mouth. Out of all the bizarre events he'd been going through lately, this might be near the top. He was just about to snack on some roasted soybeans, and now this happened. Suddenly, he wasn't feeling tired. In fact, he felt full and fresh, and the green light was gone too. Han Feng was really confused, thinking, did it have something to do with the pea turning into a whole plant? There was a mountain of questions in Han Feng's head, but first he decided to check the peas. He plucked one pea, and after opening it, he was utterly shocked to see fresh peas inside. This was a game changer. Han Feng finally discovered what his power was. He could grow unlimited plant-based food with his green hand. But what about the red one? Well, I think he will be able to grow living being. At least he had a clue now, and he decided to study his power more. But right now, Han Feng had a bigger problem to solve. He had to stock up on supplies before the apocalypse started. The weather was still very warm, birds were chirping, and everyone was roaming outside enjoying themselves. In just a few days, all of it would be destroyed, and only Han Feng knew it. Han Feng was in that crowd, thinking about all this, but he immediately dismissed the thought. He was still confused about his red, glowing hand turning green, and how touching a pea made it become a freaking whole plant. What kind of messed-up power had he acquired? In the middle of his thinking, a sweet voice called Han Feng's name from behind. As Han Feng stopped and turned back, well, it was none other than the gold digger, the greatest bitch, Iona. She was wearing a beautiful dress, looking gorgeous, and once again, with a seductive voice, she said, "What a coincidence to meet like this. It's like the heavens are trying to bring us closer." But Han Feng, he felt like he'd seen a ghost. After the last incident, he gets traumatized just by seeing girls. Lee Hyuna, the goddess of his dreams, his best friend for a long 3 years. Han Feng had done everything to make her happy, even though he knew he was an ugly, disgusting loser. But Han Feng never ever thought that bitch would end up killing him. Han Feng was furious, his whole body trembling. He remembered he swore to be an Ultra Pro Max Giga Chad, so he realized this was not the time to get worked up. He had to calm down and wait for the right time to take his sweet revenge. Hyuna used to be the goddess of his dream. For 3 long years, he was a simp who did everything in his power to get the opportunity to smash her. He did all that knowing full well that he was nothing but just another fallback guy in the friend zone. No, he wasn't even in the friend zone. He was just a piggy bank. For all those years of devoting himself and his wallet to the wrong girl, he never thought she would be the one to get him killed. Before he could lose control, Han Feng pinched himself to stay grounded and calm. It took every bit of his willpower to do so. Thinking rationally, now is not the time to take his revenge. Not yet, at least. First, he needs to take care of the supply problem unless he wants to be miserable and hungry in the Ice Age again. Hyuna walked closer and waved her hand in front of his eyes, asking what he was spacing out for. This had never happened before. Just hearing her voice used to make the poor guy wag his tail. Han Feng swallowed his hatred for the witch and faked a smile as he apologized for being speechless. He made an excuse, saying he was spaced out after seeing how gorgeous Hyuna was looking today. She was just so radiant that he got a bit lost in the moment. Now that's more like it. Hyuna coyly laughed and asked when he got so smooth with his line. Her lips lifted into a slight and confident smirk, thinking she had this boy eating out of the palm of her hand. So she went for the heart kill shot, saying, "Now that they have run into each other, why don't they go shopping?" But now Han Feng was an Ultra Pro Max Giga Chad, so he ignored her like your crush does to you and left, saying he couldn't go today. Hyuna was shocked and bewildered. She just couldn't believe what had happened. How could this pushover reject her offer? Meanwhile, Han Feng was proud of himself. This time, he wasn't letting Hyuna use him like her personal ATM. After a while, Han Feng reached Waldemar Shopping Plaza. This Waldemar in the city is the most extensive and well-stocked supermarket in the eastern region. It's like Walmart, but that brand's copyrighted, of course. When the Ice Age hits, this place will be cleaned out overnight. Back in the previous timeline, nobody ever found out who did it and how. Han Feng had already started his shopping spree and filled up 1 cart with goods. He needed to stock up as much as possible before society crumbled under the sheer cold. Han Feng asked ChatGPT to make a survival guide for the ice apocalypse, and ChatGPT made a list that included food, winter clothes, medicines, and all the other necessary steps. But right now, the biggest problem was that Han Feng didn't have the money to stock up on all the supplies. His personal wallet's current balance was a measly 15,000 yuan, equivalent to a little more than 2,000 USD. Although the food issue could be solved with his mysterious green glowing hand, what about the rest? This once again made Han Feng frustrated. He started cursing his ancestors for not buying some gold or land when they were cheap. Just then, a notification on his phone startled him. The message came from an organization called Money Jar Loans, congratulating him on his approved eligibility to take out a loan up to 168,000 yuan, or a little more than 23,000 USD. A light bulb dinged inside his mind. Instantly, Han Feng installed all the apps that give personal loans immediately. Well, there were plenty of ways to get a loan, and he wouldn't have to pay it back after the apocalypse, as money would be nothing but a piece of paper to wipe one's ass with. Out in the commercial district, a lady was angrily kicking an empty soda can on the curb. She was obviously upset about something. It turned out to be Hyuna. She didn't look like she was in the best mood at all. Her eyes were full of toxic vitriol, because one of her many simps dared to refuse to take her shopping today. When she got all dolled up to get spoiled, she was seriously pissed off that Han Feng would just take off like that without letting her deplete his bank account like a worthless leech. She started insulting the guy in her mind for being a pathetic loser who didn't even own a car. Hyuna vowed never to be nice to that simp again. But just then, a car horn startled Hyuna. The car stopped beside her, and surprise, surprise, as the SUV's window lowered, inside it was none other than our boy Han Feng. With his Chad aura, he waved at Hyuna, asking how she was doing. Hyuna was utterly shocked and questioned if the SUV was Han Feng. Han Feng casually explained, "Yeah, it was his." Han Feng, while slowly walking closer to Hyuna, made her nervous. He politely explained that his dad had been killing it in his business in the US. Today, his dad came and gave him some money, and just a while ago, he dropped his dad off at the airport. Hyuna was still processing all this. After realizing Han Feng was a good gold digger material since his dad turned out to be a wealthy man, her personality did a 360-degree turn. She immediately got all emotional and sentimental, crying and apologizing, saying she was really sorry for asking to go shopping that morning when Han Feng was going to pick up his dad from the airport. Then the waterworks came down. She started summoning those tears. She threw her victim card, saying Han Feng was really cold towards her this morning, and she thought maybe Han Feng was ditching her, his best friend. So Han Feng decided to act a little. He gently grabbed Hyona's waist, pulled her close, and while holding her chin, he said, "Why would he ever think of ditching you? She is the most important person in the world." This was enough for Hyuna to once more show her true self with her creepy smile. Continuing her act, pretending to be all shy, she said that Han Feng was also very special to her. She then asked, "Why don't they go for a movie and have dinner at a 5-star restaurant?" But Han Feng was already gone, even before she could finish her sentence, making her surprised. As she turned back, Han Feng was assembling all the supplies in the SUV's back, explaining that he still had to carry all this stuff, so he was busy today. Even though Hyuna was furious, she politely asked, "Why did he buy so much and what's inside the boxes?" Han Feng casually explained, "Nothing special, just home supplies." Then suddenly pretending to be excited, he said he also bought a special gift for Hyuna and that once he's free, he'll meet her. This made Hyuna extremely happy, and she left, saying she was really looking forward to the gift. But inside, she was really satisfied, reverting to her bitch personality, thinking she nailed it and got a great toy to play with. Meanwhile, Han Feng couldn't wait to turn her world upside down when the apocalypse hits. Yeah, when the apocalypse rolls around, he was gonna show her and her boyfriend who the real devil is. Han Feng was all geared up for the apocalypse to hit, and hit soon. Today was June 29th, and in just a few days, the temperature would start to drop, making it impossible to go out. The food issue was sorted. Then came the next big problem, electricity. After the apocalypse hits, the power grid would freeze up, but no worries. Han Feng had that covered with a bad boy generator and enough fuel to keep it running for years. So, electricity? Check. Next up, the deadly cold. Han Feng insulated his entire room so not even a bit of cold could sneak in. Even if his fuel ran out, the room would stay warm automatically. Han Feng didn't stop there. He reinforced the door, windows, ceiling, basically his entire room with metal so no one could break in. Well, now almost all the preparations were done. The only small issue was the space, but Han Feng couldn't do anything about it. By the time he finished getting everything ready, it was already July 14th, and the apocalypse was hitting tomorrow. Now, it was finally time for the main event he'd been postponing out of uncertainty all this time. It was time to buckle down and actually study his mysterious ability. Han Feng made a home-cooked meal for dinner while pondering his survival in the incoming Ice Age apocalypse. When things get hard, relying solely on the supplies he has accumulated won't be enough. But he has a possible answer to this problem. His power to manipulate plants in some mystical way might be his only hope for a sustainable future. The meal he cooked featured soybeans as its main ingredient. That's right, the same beans he conjured from a single roasted snack using his ability. He racked his brain and tried so many gestures and possible triggers, but the lights hadn't come out yet. The activation was so random that finding the right trigger seemed nearly impossible. For now, it was time for a risky taste test. Although Han Feng was hesitant, thinking what if they were poisonous, he had no other choice. Taking a deep breath, Han Feng took a bite. To his surprise, It was just like any normal soybean. In fact, it was extremely delicious. This was a huge discovery. At least he would never run out of food. The next step was the harder and more trial and error-based one. He needed to figure out how to actually use the red and green lights and make them appear according to his will. So far, he had only tried it on soybean, but what would happen if he could use it on other things? Opening his newly stocked fridge, Hanfeng steeled his resolve to experiment and see if his ability would work with other plants, too. The testing period stretched from midday until the sun was about to set. Hanfeng didn't know that as he passed out in the middle of experimentation. As he slowly opened his eyes, he noticed that he was gripping something tightly in his right hand. A green vegetable of some kind, a massive broccoli. Slowly getting up from the floor, he could not be bothered by the absolute mess in his kitchen, as the pain in his head was hellish. It felt like something was pounding from inside his skull. He had to take note of this sensation in the future. This power of his took a severe toll on the mind and body, and it couldn't be used without restrictions unless he wanted to pass out and wake up with a migraine every day. After getting up, he immediately got a spoonful of his bean to refuel again. He might have pushed himself to the limit today, but at least he learned something vital about this mysterious ability of his. A few hours ago, before he blacked out, he neatly arranged a diverse selection of produce on the kitchen floor. He tried using his power on a bunch of them. After he managed to activate the green light, some root crops like potatoes did not react to his green light at all for some unknown reason. But not all of them were duds. Some of the crops grew from the seeds into full-blown plants like the soybean stalk. Wheat was one of those, and some neither stayed the same nor grew into full-blown crops. They just exploded in his hands like mini-bombs. It was a frightening experience that caught Hanfeng off guard. After those explosions, the plants would turn into a substance that looked like coal but was very light. This development was certainly outside of his expectation. Thankfully, he could find some decent use for these inedible black substances. They could be used to heat the space like coal when put together in a container and lit up. Coming from a future where heat was a luxury, Hanfeng would gladly take these little balls of warmth. No more worrying about staying warm in the future. After a bunch of explosions, he tried many more times and failed most of them. He just kept chucking those black balls into the bucket one by one, but the success rate was extremely low. However, Hanfeng started to notice a pattern. When he remained calm and focused, there was some reaction. So Hanfeng tried to remain calm and focused, activated his ability, and bam! A fresh broccoli grew instantly in his hand. After that, Hanfeng fainted. Back in the present, Hanfeng was exhausted, eating the soybeans he had grown, a little happy that at least he had learned something about his ability. After he finished eating, Hanfeng sat in the lotus position, trying to meditate. He imagined himself out in nature, buck naked in his mind palace. He walked on the ground with bare feet, his soles making direct contact with the soil where life grows. Sunlight kissed his skin as all life around him harmonized. Just like Adam in the Garden of Eden, his body and mind were both part of the natural world, a peaceful resonance of all that has life. Once he entered that state of mind, he slowly opened his eyes, and a familiar green glow appeared once again. This ability of his was directly connected to his consciousness. Working from that concept, as soon as Hanfeng touched a grain of rice, it grew into a full-grain rice plant. Hanfeng had finally mastered his green hand. Then Hanfeng thought, what if he touched meat? Would it also grow like plants? So he slowly brought his right hand, wrapped with the green light, towards a juicy slab of meat. He tried to make a piece of meat grow, but there was no reaction. He already half expected it, but it was still disappointing that there were no reactions at all. Maybe the green light only worked on plants. Thinking that the gentle approach might not be effective, Hanfeng grabbed his meat and squeezed hard while praying that his right hand would work its magic. After a few minutes, even after squeezing his meat for several minutes, nothing happened. You could see the defeat and dejection in his tired eyes. Then Hanfeng remembered when he was meditating, he could sense two distinct colors, and he hadn't tried using the red color on the meat yet. So Hanfeng once again closed his eyes and tried to summon the red light. For a few minutes, nothing happened. After a little while, A spark of red light finally made an appearance on his right hand. With that initial spark, the glow swiftly wrapped around his hand. Surprisingly, it also wrapped around his meat. It looked like it was creating some sort of bubbling reaction. The meat started to boil, and as Han Feng opened his eyes, excited, he got disgusted. The meat had spoiled to the extent that just the smell was enough to make him puke. He threw the meat on the floor. Realizing that this disfigured sludge might provide some valuable insights, Han Feng crouched on the ground to observe it. He poked the thing, and it was a little squishy. So this is how meat would react to the red light. Han Feng was a little disappointed, thinking, was this all the red light could do? Spoil meat? Han Feng knew there had to be more. The meat looked like it had gone through a disintegration process. The word disintegration sparked an idea in Han Feng's head. He grabbed a bunch of soybeans from his bean pile and gripped them hard in his right hand. In his left hand was the red light and the cooked-up meat. If the green light represented the evolution of matter, then the red light was the opposite, which would be disintegration. Since he was already testing out some confusing concepts, what would happen if he combined the bean he created with the green light with the red meat? This question made Han Feng very curious and excited. Han Feng combined both his bean with his meat, and bam! The result was astounding. Somehow his small, dull meat got erect. Even Han Feng was shocked to see how his small meat got so much bigger and fresher. But where did his beans go? Could it be that his beans merged with his meat, producing this giant slab? Han Feng meticulously inspected the big meat. No matter how you look at it, it's undeniably incredible. It looks, feels, and smells exactly like real meat, but even fresher somehow. Gaining some confidence that he's getting a lot better at this superpower thing, he decided to go for some more experiments. After a few hours, he was back to square one. Once again, his kitchen floor was filled with charred remains of meat and crops. He frustratingly threw a tantrum as everything he tried failed miserably. Getting all that exasperation out of his system, Han Feng sat up and took a deep breath. He'll just pause the experiments for now. He can always just take his time to figure out its deeper intricacies later anyway. Today was still a productive one. Even though he ended it on a bitter and charred note, Han Feng could already see the future. If he could just successfully master this mysterious power, there's no doubt about it. With infinite resources, he would be the man standing at the pinnacle of this post-apocalyptic world. It's his dream, so he could put some sweet muscles in his image. Speaking of power, he might have forgotten one of the most important aspects of survival. Food alone is not going to cut it. In the coming days, he will be completely vulnerable with all this loot if he doesn't have a decent weapon to defend himself. He swiftly took the various crops littered around his floor. He had to hurry and find himself a weapon before the temperature went into a nosedive. And while packing, it finally happened. It started to snow outside. The apocalypse had started. It was really happening. After that, Han Feng, wearing warm clothes, came onto the street. In just a few hours, the entire street was already covered in snow. Although people were enjoying the snow in summer, it would really become a disaster. He needed a gun, and fast. But buying a gun in this country is illegal, and he doesn't exactly have any connections to the criminal world. Just then, a sharp voice pierced Han Feng's ears, that exaggerated fashion style, acting all high and mighty with no work to do, always roaming the streets. Everyone knew him as Homeless Joe. His real name is Brother Lee, but everyone calls him that. He lives in the same neighborhood as Han Feng. Brother Lee acts like he's in charge of big construction projects and seems to know everyone around. But the truth is, he's just a big bluffer and a homeless man. The only thing is, he has connections with big builders and even gangsters, so everyone treats him well. He was the right man to get guns from. But the tough part was how to start a conversation with him. Han Feng, nervous, first waved at Brother Lee, calling his name. Acting a little egotistic, Brother Lee asked if he knew Han Feng. Han Feng explained that they live in the same neighborhood and regularly bump into each other. Brother Lee, acting bored, said he was pretty busy and apologized for not remembering everyone's face. Then, Han Feng, confirming there was no one around, came close to Brother Lee and whispered in his ear, asking if he dealt with guns. This shocked Brother Lee. Panicked, Brother Lee asked why Han Feng needed that, and Han Feng remained silent. He couldn't say the world would end in a few days. Seeing Han Feng's silence, Brother Lee assumed Han Feng was going to rob a bank or something and warned him not to do anything like that. But Han Feng, on the spot, came up with an excuse. He explained it wasn't what Brother Lee was thinking. One day, while riding his bike to work, he ran into an old man who was spitting everywhere and then spat right on his face. Han Feng confronted the old man, insisting he say sorry, but the man spat on his face again. That made Han Feng furious, so he gave him a good beating. But the next day, the same old man came up with his gang and beat the shit out of Han Feng. Still, to this day, whenever they see Han Feng, they come to beat him. Han Feng's life became a living hell. That's why he needed the gun for self-defense, to scare them. Han Feng didn't expect this cliché story to work, but it did wonder. Brother Lee became all emotional and swore to help Han Feng. The next moment, Brother Lee became Han Feng's blood-dear big bro, insisting that from today, Han Feng could call him his big bro. He said he would make sure to fulfill Han Feng's request. But then Brother Lee said to follow him to the bus stop, since they had to take the bus because his Mercedes was in for service. Well, there's a limit to how much a man can bluff, but now it didn't matter. Han Feng thought, although Brother Lee likes to bluff, he's not a bad person. So Han Feng took out his SUV, saying not to worry about it since he had his car. This surprised Brother Lee. As Han Feng was driving, Brother Lee was really impressed. He didn't think Han Feng was a rich kid. Then, Han Feng took out his Samsung Galaxy S9 and started posting images on Instagram, boasting about driving his new car. Finally, after a while, they reached their destination, and people were already feeling the cold. They were burning some wood to warm themselves. As soon as Brother Lee got out of the SUV, the gang came close to him. They were surprised and shocked, as this was the latest Tiger SUV. They asked how much Brother Lee bought it for, and Brother Lee casually said it was nothing big, just $20,000. Meanwhile, Han Feng, at this point, was not even shocked by Brother Lee's bluffing. He was used to it. As they went inside, the boss was sitting there. Brother Lee, a little nervous, first introduced Han Feng, saying he wanted to buy a gun. Hearing this, the boss scanned Han Feng, sending chills down his spine. Then the boss smirked, saying he thought Brother Lee brought something interesting, but it turned out to be nothing but a squirt. With that, the boss threw a gun like it was candy, saying the price was $6,000. Seeing the boss's attitude, Han Feng, still nervous, asked if he could get something a little longer, with an 8x scope. The boss paused for a moment, then started shouting, "Are you asking for a freaking sniper rifle? Do you think this is a gun mall? And why does a young kid like you even want a sniper rifle? Are you planning to rob a bank or something?" Brother Lee, seeing the boss worked up, immediately came to the rescue. He started telling Han Feng's sad, tragic story about how his ex-wife suddenly came to him with 3 kids, all from different dads, and God knows what else he told the boss. The boss immediately got furious, slamming his hand on the desk, saying, "How can his wife be so disgusting?" At this point, Han Feng started to see the similarity. Suddenly, the boss said that from now on, Han Feng was his little brother, and he would make sure to get him a sniper rifle. Han Feng, on the other hand, couldn't believe how such obvious fake stories convinced both of them. Han Feng thanked the boss, and the boss told his subordinate to get a semi-auto rifle and also gave a pistol as a gift to his new little bro. This surprised Han Feng, seeing how kind the boss was to him. Han Feng, a little nervous, mentioned that his friend in the government told him that due to the abnormal weather, there was going to be a shortage of food and other supplies, so it was better to stockpile when it was available in advance. The boss and Han Feng matched in a serious, glaring competition, and the boss realized something. With a serious face, he thanked Han Feng, then screamed at Brother Lee, "Get out of here! Just seeing your face makes me puke!" Outside, Han Feng and Brother Lee were walking, and Brother Lee started boasting again, explaining how if it wasn't for him, Han Feng would have been done for. The boss would have eaten him alive, but he handled the situation beautifully. Han Feng thanked Brother Lee and, as a token of gratitude, promised to grab him some cigarettes on the way. But Brother Lee, being his usual self, said not to be silly. He didn't want cigarette. He just liked helping people. But if Han Feng really insisted, then he wanted Huazi, as other brands made him choke. Although the price of the cigar was high, once he got paid for his project, he would definitely pay Han Feng back and even take him to the sauna. On the other hand, Han Feng was lost in his own deep thinking. Now he had supplies, weapons, check. He was all set for the early stages of the apocalypse at least. Now it was time to study his ability. If Han Feng could fully master his ability, his chances of survival would skyrocket. But as he was deep in thought, his foot slipped on ice, and he did a 360-degree flip, falling on the floor, groaning in pain, holding his foot. It felt like his foot was broken. Trembling in pain, Han Feng gave his SUV key to Brother Lee, insisting he take him to the hospital. Brother Lee got a little nervous, saying although he didn't have a driving license and didn't know how to drive, he would try. The next moment, we see Brother Lee with all his might trying to lift Han Feng onto his shoulder, looking like he would pass out any moment now. And Han Feng? Well, he was thinking, where the hell did I get stuck? Meanwhile, the snowstorm was really getting fiercer, the weather more disastrous. The whole hospital was getting frozen. Inside, a nurse was sitting, observing the worsening weather. Just then, the phone rang, and the nurse stood up, which made her big melons bouncing. She was immediately called to the hall as there was an emergency. Head nurse Jin had only just started her night shift, but calls from the hall were already flooding in as the emergency section was severely short-staffed. The pretty nurse had no other choice but to step up. Upon getting an X-ray in the hospital, it was confirmed that Han Feng had really broken his leg. The doctor explained that there was a stable fracture on his right tibia. It would be easy to set, but he'd need to stay for an hour of observation before going home with his meds. This accident could not have happened at a worse time. It just had to occur before the apocalypse went into full swing. While looking at his X-ray results, Han Feng regretted being so careless. Brother Lee accompanied him for most of the process, but the dude had to leave as he apparently had a few deals to handle. He's a real one, though, and he even left his number in case Han Feng needed anything else. Now that he was alone in the hospital lobby, Han Feng sighed heavily. He wondered how he could make such a stupid mistake at such a crucial time. Looking at the chaos around him was stressful. The hospital quickly overflowed with patients, victims of accidents caused by the sudden blizzard and quickly plummeting temperature. Emergency beds lined the hallways as a grim testament to the worsening conditions outside. As for Han Feng, he just wanted to get his meds and leave this place as fast as possible before the roads closed for good. Thankfully, his idle time would not be boring, as a goddess had just walked right in front of him with her big bouncy melon. Head nurse Jin had come to handle the rush of patients in the emergency room. The first bed she checked had a patient with heavy wound. Next on her rotation was bed 5, where a patient's wounds had just been cleaned. Thankfully, the vitals were stable. Bed 5 just needed another dose of glucose in 10 minutes. She advised the attending nurse that if the patient's heart rate dropped below 80, epinephrine must be administered immediately. Throughout the rounds, Han Feng could not take his eyes off her. Despite being so hot, she was also very talented. Han Feng started to admire her. Next, Jin came close to a 10-year-old kid who had just gotten into an accident due to the heavy ice. His leg was fractured, so she played with him using his favorite teddy bear while sitting with her legs spread. This sight melted Han Feng's little PP. She was pretty, but also a little airheaded and way too clueless. Suddenly, the old man sitting beside Han Feng started calling the attention of the pretty head nurse. She was not really required to tend to the patients outside of her rounds, but she still took the call with a smile. Head nurse Jin politely apologized to the old man and asked if she could come back a bit later to help, as she still needed to provide urgent care to some patients to cover for the staff shortage. The old man complained that his back hurt too much. He explained that the back pain had been worsening lately and wanted the head nurse to take a look to see what was causing it. In reality, this pervy bastard, while talking to her, was recording the panties of Jin with his right hand so that he could play with his little pee-pee after he got home. Well, this was his hobby, but Jin was way too hot to handle, and on top of that, she was also airheaded. Noticing this, the pervy bastard decided to take action. With a lustful face, he extended his dirty hand and grabbed the head nurse's waist, startling her. While touching her waist, he explained that this area was the most painful part. But Jin, oh God, she was really too much of an airhead. Still clueless about the situation, she started to laugh as she was way too sensitive with her body and started to feel ticklish. Jin just smiled and apologized once again, saying that for such back problems, they might need to schedule an X-ray just to be sure. But seeing all this, the perv started pushing it, his hand crawling even lower from her waist. He even started to pinch it like kneading dough, explaining that now this area of his was starting to hurt. He was having a great time, but suddenly something came flying toward the pervy old man and hit him hard, causing him to fall. Well, now he might get an actual back pain. But even in this situation, Jin was showing worry for the old man. The next moment, Han Feng came, apologizing for his crutch flying to the side. Just as he was about to touch it, the perv started sweating nervously and screaming at Han Feng, threatening to call the police if he didn't return his phone. But Han Feng did not listen. He walked all the way to the side of the room. Although Han Feng's leg was broken, he was not feeling any pain, and his bandage was getting all messed up because he wouldn't let this freaking perv get away with doing something so disgusting. As soon as he opened the phone, his suspicions were proven right. The pervy video of the head nurse was all clear, even with 10x zoom. He could even see the germs on the surface of the skin. Well, it was the latest iPhone 69. This boiled Han Feng's blood. Han Feng showed the video to the old man, asking if he had the nerve to make a pervy video of someone with an iPhone 69. Han Feng told the old man he would call security and have them escort the bastard to a jail cell where criminals love putting pervs in their place. Han Feng would be keeping the phone, and the next time he saw this old creep again, he threatened to ruin his miserable and revolting life. The old bastard knew he had no other choice but to flee and never show himself near this place again, and it infuriated him. The first chance he got up from that hospital floor and bolted out of the door like his life depended on it. Meanwhile, head nurse Jin was just confused as to how someone complaining about severe back pain could run so fast. Han Feng was shocked to see a first-hand display of the most naive and airheaded person in real life. He decided to show her what the old fart was doing with the phone, filming up her skirt. But even after she saw the video, based on her reaction, she really did not notice anything wrong going on. Han Feng handed her the phone with the video footage so she could decide whether to wipe it or call the cop on the owner. He also reminded her to be more careful so people like that perv wouldn't take advantage of her kindness. She smiled with the brightness of 1,000 stars and then asked if Han Feng's leg was supposed to be injured. The adrenaline from catching that old perv in the act must have numbed the pain from his broken leg, but now that it was dealt with, the pain came rushing back in, and he screamed in agony. Thankfully, head nurse Jin was an expert when it came to mending these types of injuries and quickly set the casting back in place. She looked at him and asked if it still hurt. Han Feng thanked her for dealing with his broken leg, and now it didn't hurt at all. At that moment, it was as if only the two of them existed in the crowded room. Jin returned the gratitude as she promised to never let such bad guys get away with messing with her anymore. She would punch them really well from now on. Han Feng just wanted her to be more aware of her surrounding. Seeing as she was letting his broken leg and feet touch her front pillows, it seemed like she had not learned anything at all. She was still as clueless and unaware as ever. While Han Feng's head was in the clouds, another nurse called for Jin as her help was needed on the emergency beds. Before going back to her rounds, the angelic head nurse reminded him not to forget to come back in a week to get his leg checked again. Han Feng promised that he would, but making any plans a week from now was unrealistic. He just smiled helplessly, for only he knew what was really going on in the world. He took the crutch that he smashed against the old perv and limped his way out of the hospital. Han Feng just accepted the fact that he wouldn't be able to see her ever again. The next day came, and the blizzard had not stopped. It had gotten even stronger instead. It had essentially frozen all infrastructure and services, making just going outside a dangerous challenge. On the morning news, emergency weather reports kept coming in about how within the next 24 hours, all regions of the country would be experiencing heavy snowfall and a sharp drop in temperatures. Dubai, Egypt, the Amazon basin, and places that should not be experiencing this type of phenomenon were seeing their land masses buried in thick blankets of snow. All the scientists from all over the country gathered in the United States and declared that this ice storm would pass, and soon the government announced for everyone to stay safe until then. Meanwhile, Han Feng was just chilling inside his house. The heater was on, the room temperature under 20 degrees, and he was watching the news channel. Warm, cozy, and sipping wine inside his decked-out home, Han Feng clicked his tongue. The government and media just kept lying through their teeth, feeding the public bullshit to maintain order. If he hadn't died and come back to life already, he might even believe them. But this time was different. He was well prepared for everything that was about to come. Supplies were fully stocked, the house was reinforced, and the heating system was working flawlessly. He had been so well prepared that there was nothing to worry about for the immediate future. But suddenly, his phone started buzzing incessantly with messages from the Happy Housing Complex residents group chat, discussing the weird weather and how the snow was already making the roads unusable. Everyone was clearly clueless about what was happening, but not the member nicknamed Mysterious Person. Whoever this was demanded everyone's attention to inform them that the snowstorm wasn't caused by normal weather patterns, but by something within the Earth itself. Mysterious Person proclaimed that everyone should heed his word, as the Ice Age apocalypse was about to begin. No one was more shocked after reading those messages than Han Feng. Who the hell is this mysterious person, and how do they know anything about the apocalypse? Inside the group chat, the residents of the building were furious. They wanted to go out and buy supplies. They didn't know when the weather would revert to normal, so they were fighting over who would go to the supermarket. The people were protesting for the property manager to show up and explain their current situation. The agents apologized to the angry mob, saying they couldn't really do anything with the weather being this bad. However, the people weren't accepting any apologies. They were hungry and needed food to survive, so if the property managers weren't much help, they demanded a refund on the fees they were paying. Han Feng, who was among the crowd, scoffed at everyone present. He knew this crisis was beyond the control of humans, so this fight was completely meaningless. One of the residents stepped up and tried to calm everyone down. From his aura, he looked like a cunning fox scheming something. He stated that the snowstorm was so violent that the property owner couldn't handle the situation alone. Even if the manager somehow cleared the snow around the apartment, there was no guarantee that the roads to the supermarket were cleared and safe to drive on. Now, everyone was getting more panicked and started bombarding the smart-ass man, asking what they should do. Should they starve to death? But the Fox Man suggested that they all work together to remove the snow and walk to the supermarket to stock up on supply. Our boy just stared at the man doing all the talking. He had some recollection of this person, recalling that his name was Jan. In his previous life, he was a lively person, and, as demonstrated today, he was one to unite people under his banner. Then one user interrupted the debate, saying that all this talk was nonsense. He commented that anyone who wanted to go outside should just do so without troubling other people. With that said, he logged out of the discussion room, showing how disinterested he was. Following that man's disappearance, an overly dressed character stepped up, saying he would help clear the path because he needed to do some business with his brother outside, amounting to millions. Our boy immediately knew the one talking was none other than Brother Lee. His arrogant and con artist nature was very obvious, even online. With Lee volunteering, many people followed through, and thus the discussion was finalized. Some people with cute characters started raising their hands, saying that even though they were physically weak, they would do their best. Then, another pretty character jumped in, trying to earn sympathy, saying although she had the flu, she would also come down and help everyone. Our boy immediately knew this character was Hyona, the evil witch. Hearing that Hyona would go, all her simps hopped in as well, saying they were willing to cooperate. At this point, Han Feng had enough. He started remembering his past simping days, so he logged out, recalling the day he died simping for the witch. He couldn't help but admit that Hyona was really good at catching people's hearts. Hyona then messaged our boy directly, asking what he had been up to lately. She mentioned that he told her he would contact her and give her a gift, so she's been waiting. Then she said whenever Han Feng decided to visit her, she demanded he buy some food from the supermarket. Next, she clicked a seductive image of herself, wearing less clothing in this freezing weather, showing her bare skin and closing her legs like she was calling Han Feng to smash her right now. Even though he's no longer a sucker for the deceitful witch, Han Feng admitted that Hyona was indeed an expert at seduction. She might have been a succubus in her previous life. After that, Han Feng replied to Hyona with something we don't know, but whatever he messaged, Hyona didn't like it. She got pissed, threw her phone on the bed, and stomped on it, venting her frustration toward Han Feng. Today was the second day since it started snowing. The temperature was now minus 20 degrees. In the early stage of the apocalypse, they still had the central heating system running, so it wasn't too difficult. Even the internet was still up and running, so everyone was living their lives as usual. As for our hero, he was only scrolling through erotic videos to pass the time. This was just the second day of the apocalypse, and he was already bored to death. It became clear to him that the biggest threat during the apocalypse would be the loneliness that came with it. His leg was still recovering, so he couldn't go outside to pass the time and explore. A broken bone needs at least a few months to completely recover, so it's no surprise. Not having better things to do, he decided to watch Netflix and chill. After a while, in that movie, the doctors were sewing up the wounds of a certain man who jumped off the 15th floor. They discovered that his damaged internal organs and bones had started to regenerate. That man was destined to die, but because he had a healing ability, he was able to self-heal. This scene shocked Han Feng. He thought if his theory was right, his left hand had the power to regrow any plants, which was similar to healing or repairing. What if he used his ability on his broken leg? Without thinking any further, he activated his green hand and gently grabbed his broken leg, wondering if there would be some kind of effect. Pouring everything he had into this little experiment, our boy stood still and waited. However, the green flame just dissipated after a moment, without producing any results. Han Feng once again activated his green flame and for a few minutes maintained it, but to his disappointment, nothing happened. Han Feng lay down on the couch, feeling a bit disappointed. He thought the green light would help him recover his injury faster. Well, as the green light didn't work on meat, and his leg is also kind of a piece of meat, he thought that was the reason his green flame didn't work. He couldn't risk using his red flame on his leg. He couldn't imagine his leg turning into a distorted piece of pickle. Drowsiness hit our hero, and he fell asleep after a single yawn. As his consciousness faded, the next thing he saw was himself wearing some tribal headgear while riding a mountain goat. And from what it seemed, he was traveling with a herd of goats through somewhere. He continued to ride the wild goat like a madman, smacking the goat's ass and yelling for it to run faster. Behind him, a horde of other goats was following. The goat Han Feng was riding clearly didn't like being smacked, so the next moment it tossed Han Feng off, sending him flying and crashing to the ground with a bam. As he fell, he hit his ankle, and now he was in severe pain, feeling like he broke it. He was groaning, unable to move. Seeing Han Feng in pain, the goat slowly came closer and started licking his wounded ankle. Han Feng then patted the goat's head as a thank you, but this once again annoyed the goat. It extended its tongue 10 meters long, wrapped it around Han Feng's leg, and raised it, making Han Feng's leg spread wide open. Han Feng was shocked, but the wrapped tongue of the goat started to glow green, with its saliva dripping all around Han Feng's leg. He began to feel a cool sensation, and bam! Han Feng woke up from this weird-ass dream, breathing heavily. He was all covered in sweat, thinking, what was with this hideous, messy dream? And who was that pervy goat? And what was it planning to do with me? Then he remembered the cooling sensation at the end of his dream, the same feeling he was experiencing right now. He turned his attention toward his broken ankle, and to his utter surprise, his leg was covered in green flame. He was shocked. Han Feng then slowly, one by one, removed his bandages. After he was done, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. His leg didn't hurt anymore. It was completely healed. This was a groundbreaking discovery. This made Han Feng curious, thinking, does this green flame help with self-recovery while I sleep? So he decided to test it one more time. He grabbed his kitchen knife, all nervous, his hands trembling in fear. But to survive, he had to find out more about his ability. Taking a deep breath and closing his eyes, he made a small cut on his finger, and red tomato ketchup started to ooze out. The next moment, Han Feng summoned his green flame and covered his entire hand. After a while, he gave a smirking, confident smile, saying, "Now I understand." Well, what did he actually understand? We'll get to know after some time. Meanwhile, outside the apartment, the residents were trying to clear the snow and remove the broken pieces of trees. There we met the sly fox with glasses, Jiang, who had calmed the situation earlier. He was thanking everyone for working hard just because he said so. Then, with a polite tone, he apologized to an old man called Uncle Liu, saying that even though he was so old, he had to come out and work hard in this heavy rain. Liu just casually laughed it off, saying he didn't do much. All the hard work was done by the two Jin brothers who did their work, and his too. Then we met the Jin brothers. They were twin brothers. One was confident and the other was a little shy and introverted. They also laughed off the praise, saying it was their duty to help the elderly in these hard times. Just then, a bam sound startled the Jin brothers. They turned back and noticed someone in a pink dress had slipped and fallen. They came close to help her. Jin extended his hand, asking if she was all right, advising her to be careful since the ground was all frozen and very slippery. The girl took Jin's hand, and as we got a closer look, it was none other than Jin, the head nurse. She was wearing a hot pink coat with pink earmuffs. With a polite tone and a warm smile, she thanked the Jin brothers for their kind words. The Jin brothers said they should clear the main path first, and if she needed any help, she could call them, and they would come running. She thanked them again, saying she could handle it herself. Meanwhile, Jiang was still chatting with Uncle Liu. Jiang said the snow was getting heavier, and they would have to be quick while purchasing supplies later, to which the old man agreed. Then, the old man, while smoking his cigar with a serious face, whispered something about supply. Jiang asked what, and Uncle Liu just casually said it was nothing significant. He mentioned he had heard that for the past few days, an owner in their neighborhood had been bringing supplies on a small truck like he was moving house, and that was a little suspicious to him. Jiang laughingly said, "Isn't that a common sight? Maybe that person is just moving into the apartment or renovating his house." The old man was listening without saying anything. Then, while holding his cap with a serious face, he whispered that he saw gas tanks and a fireplace furnace being imported here. According to the old man, it didn't seem normal for someone to buy a heater and furnace in summer, right? After taking a deep smoke, the old man said it was like that person was preparing for winter, as if he knew it was coming. Their intense conversation was interrupted by the Jin brothers, who came from behind, telling Jiang and Uncle Liu that they had cleared the main path, and perhaps they should start moving out now. Uncle Liu turned back and thanked the Jin brothers for their hard work. Just then, a creepy man startled the Jin brothers from behind by grabbing them and saying they were talking about making preparations to get through the winter. That sounded interesting. But before he could finish his sentence, a thick snowball hit the man in the back of the head. And yeah, it hit him hard. The snowball was thrown by Liu Yan, his woman. She shouted at her hubby to stop slacking and get over there to continue working. This annoyed him, and he started to yell at her, saying he obviously did all the work alone while she just watched from the sidelines and gave commands. But she grabbed his finger between her two fingers, saying not to point his finger while talking. It's bad manners. Meanwhile, the Jin brothers silently slipped away from the chaos. Just then, Jiang came to resolve the quarrel. He asked the couple to stop arguing since the main path was clear and they needed to hurry up. Head nurse Jin was also ready to buy some supplies. She had a sick mother at home and wanted to get some essentials to send back. The twin brothers also wanted to buy supplies for their parents. But Uncle Lu, with a casual smile, once again asked Jiang what his thoughts were on the matter. Did he also think that person knew about this ice storm and stocked up in advance? Jiang, with a serious face, didn't say anything for a second. Then, laughingly, he said he didn't think that was the case, and this storm would just pass in a few days and everything would soon return to normal. But then, maintaining his smile and raising his glasses, oh man, he was giving off serious Asian vibes, he continued, saying that even if they assumed this snowstorm wouldn't stop and would only worsen over time, if someone in their neighborhood possessed a huge amount of resources, wasn't that a good thing? Uncle Lu started to laugh, saying he was right, and that young ones indeed use their brains more. After that, they all marched together toward the supermarket, but the snowstorm only got worse. Even though they were all heavily dressed in winter clothes and equipped with umbrellas, it was getting hard to walk in the heavy snow. Meanwhile, all the lights were off in the apartment except for Han Feng's room. Inside, he was passed out, drooling, covered in sweat, looking like it was too warm. He was even wearing just his pajama. When someone started knocking on his door, he was in a deep sleep, dreaming pervy dreams about goats, but the door knock woke him up. Still half asleep and wiping his drool, he opened the door, and it was none other than Brother Li. Han Feng apologized, saying he was in a deep sleep, and that's why he was late opening the door. Brother Li, standing there with a smirking smile, smoking a cigar and holding a huge-ass gun, said he brought the item Han Feng wanted, and it was a semi-automatic on top of that. Brother Li handed the semi-auto machine rifle to Han Feng, thanking him, saying it was only because of Han Feng that he was able to secure supplies before the situation got this bad. Han Feng just chuckled, saying Brother Li was too kind. He just did it because Brother Li helped him get this machine. But things took a shift when Brother Li sighed deeply. Sigh. Han Feng noticed the change instantly. "What's wrong, bro?" he asked, concern creeping into his voice. Brother Li asked Han Feng if he knew about the supermarket in the East District. "We went there after the snow today to buy some stuff, but the supermarket was completely emptied overnight." Shock washed over Han Feng, and he shouted, "Emptied out the whole supermarket in one night?" But inside, Han Feng knew this was destined to happen, as in his previous life, someone had emptied the supermarket in a similar way. It was just his speculation, but now that Brother Li confirmed it, this news was serious. As they parted ways, Li gave a casual wave, saying he was heading back and telling Han Feng, "Stay warm, bro." "Okay, bro," Han Feng replied, still lost in thought. Back inside Han Feng's house, he shut the door with a clack-clack, the sound echoing in the silence. Han Feng was still deep in thought. Emptied an entire supermarket overnight without making a sound? How did they do it? He pondered, trying to piece together the mystery. Memories of old stories and comics flooded his mind, where characters have powers to manipulate space, suggesting this might be more than just a regular theft. Could there really be someone with spatial abilities? Han Feng wondered aloud, just thinking about the possibility that there might be more humans with superpowers and that he wasn't the only one with powers was enough to make him tense. There was no other way an entire supermarket could get sucked dry. "It's really unsettling," Han Feng finally admitted. He clenches their fist, glowing with green aura, showing their resolve and unease about the situation. Han Feng was sitting on the couch, deep in thought, reading through the dense lines of his book. His expression was serious, showing his determination to understand his abilities better. He knew he had to be prepared if other superpowered individuals showed up. He needed a plan, a strategy. The pages of his book were filled with notes, sketches, and observations on different food items. So far, what he knows is that his ability can react with various food materials, producing multiple effects. He reflected, looking at the drawings of soybeans, broccoli, wheat, and even a slab of meat. His ability was unique, no doubt, but mastering it was proving to be a challenge. He reached for a bowl of soybean, ready to test his power again. With a focused expression, he picked up a handful of soybeans, his mind racing. The success rate is extremely low. On average, soybeans succeed once in 10 attempts and meat rarely succeeds, even after dozens of tries, he thought, frustration creeping into his voice. As his hand began to glow with a green aura, he couldn't help but wonder, Why exactly is this happening? The soybeans in his hand started to react, green energy swirling around them. But just like before, the reaction was volatile, ending in a burst of green energy. Once again, Han Feng was left holding a lump of black goo. He was really annoyed and frustrated. Till now, he had only learned how to summon his red and green flame, but the success rate of him spawning and growing food was random. Han Feng shouted, "The failure rate is just too high." He sighed, his shoulders slumping with the weight of his repeated failures. But he wasn't ready to give up. He crushed the lump in his hand, determination flaring in his eyes. "I must figure out how to use this ability properly today." The clock on the wall showed 22:45, late into the night. Yet, Han Feng continued his relentless pursuit, unwilling to rest until he achieved some semblance of success. Finally, after countless attempts, there in front of Han Feng was a fully grown soybean plant, all fresh and green. Han Feng, shirtless and sweating, finally got a grip on something useful, but in the process, it sucked all the energy out of his body. He felt like he was dying, and he wasn't looking too happy about it. Han Feng sat on his couch, still shirtless and deep in thought. On one side, there was a pile of waste, his failed attempts to summon the plant, and on the other side, the soybean plant stood proudly. The energy output from the green light isn't constant, he realized. It looked like he was trying to figure out how to make this energy thing work properly. A visual explanation popped up in his mind. Different foods require different energy levels to process. There were energy fluctuation graphs and warning, showing Han Feng sitting with a heap of dirt next to him, still in his shorts. Clearly, he was trying to get this energy thing down to a science. His theory was that different crops needed different energy levels to grow. For example, if a soybean plant needed 1 unit of energy, then a wheat plant might not grow with just 1 unit. He had to figure out the puzzle. One wrong move and it's game over, he thought, visualizing the process of energy transfer with timers. It was a delicate balance, and Han Feng wasn't having an easy time. Looking a bit bewildered, Han Feng scratched his head. Just then, he remembered something. This mode looks familiar, he thought. Realizing the method he was using reminded him of an old rhythm game. Han Feng remembered the popular music dance game from over a decade ago. Characters danced on the screen, and he started connecting the dots on how to apply this game logic to his energy control. With a determined look, Han Feng visualized energy arrows in the rhythm game style, each second needing the right energy input. His hand glowed green as he prepared to hit the perfect notes. He channeled the energy, glowing bright green, and nailed it perfectly. "Perfect!" he exclaimed, holding up a healthy-looking plant. He had the hang of it now, looking triumphant. With his success, Han Feng moved on to the next experiment. Standing in the kitchen with boxes of instant noodles and some meat, he decided, next up, time to experiment with meat. Han Feng remembered how his previous kitchen experiment went wrong. Dude tried to cook some meat, but it turned into some nasty black goop. Gross, man. Han Feng, still shirtless because the blast might ruin his shirt, stood in front of a pile of meat and a bowl full of soybean, contemplating the mountain of fried chicken. He thought, cooking meat can't be that different from veggie, right? Channeling his inner chef, Han Feng held a piece of chicken with glowing energy symbols. It looked like he was cracking the code on how to cook this meat right. Han Feng focused intensely, trying to sync the energy flow with the meat. But wait, it was taking longer than with veggie. Everything was going well, but one wrong move and bam! The energy exploded in his face. "Ah!" he yelled as the black goop covered him. "Major fail, bro!" Determined not to give up, Han Feng wiped off the goop and went for another attempt. He swung again, but it was another miss. The kitchen was a mess, and he was frustrated. "This is nasty!" he shouted, covered in the thick, nasty liquid from his meat. With an angry face, Han Feng shouted, "Damn it! The difficulty level is off the charts!" The aftermath of Han Feng's failed attempts looked like a disaster zone, the kitchen covered in black goo. He took a moment to meditate amidst the chaos. Boxes of fried chicken surrounded him as he tried to center his energy. His hands glowed with red and green energy as he focused on channeling it into the meat. Arrows and symbols flew around, showing his intense concentration. Finally, he did it! He successfully managed to cook the meat properly. All sweaty and out of breath, he was very proud of himself. But all the work got the better of him, and he passed out. His meat lay beside him, still big and perfectly cooked. The scene shifts to the outside world. A major snowstorm has hit, and the broadcast is updating everyone, saying, "This is a snowstorm that only occurs once in a century. We advise everyone to remain in their homes and avoid going outside." Han Feng, on the other hand, is lying on the couch, tired. He's listening to the news while resting. The disaster is widespread, and efforts are being made to combat it. Transport, power, and network services are disrupted. Please be patient. At this moment, Han Feng was really annoyed at how much the news channels would lie to people. With the chaos outside, staying home was the best option. Han Feng stretched, waking up his hand. He was gearing up for another day indoor. Just then, Han Feng's phone dinged. It was the neighborhood group chat. Already bored, he decided to check it out. In the group chat, it was a mess. Some people were thinking of waiting for the government to save them, while others were skeptical and thinking about how to save themselves and get supply. Just then, Uncle Liu chimed in, asking everyone, "Do you really think the news is true and the government will come to save us? If the government really wanted to save us, trucks full of supplies should have already come. On the contrary, from what I've heard from my friend, armored vehicles and tanks are marching towards City A, and there's only one answer: war." Hearing all this, everyone got stressed and tense. They flocked to Uncle Liu, saying, "If this is really true, that means they are messed up. They are just waiting here for their death. What should they do now?" Han Feng, seeing this, also remembered the war happening in his previous life. The group chat continued, and now came Mr. Aizen saying, "If what Uncle Liu says is true, then they really have to start taking measures. Everyone instantly has to move their butts and start preparing for the worst." We get a closer look at Aizen. His room was freezing. Fog was coming out of his mouth as he talked, and he had just a small heater barely keeping the cold at bay. He continued, saying, "There are already many people who ran out of food and supplies in the building. The situation is really the worst, and they really don't have a clue when help from government will come. So according to Hyen, it's best that they all gather supplies themselves. They all have to come together, act as one, and help those who are facing difficulties." He suggests that owners with excess food supplies should donate some to those who have run out of food. He myself will donate half of his food supplies to those in need. Anyone who wants to donate their supplies can contact him quickly. Hearing this, everyone started to murmur. Then Mr. Pervy Guy, a little shy, came to Hyona, saying, "Brother Aizen is right. Everyone in our neighborhood should help each other out to get through this crisis together. We can't let families starve in such cold weather, right?" He said he would happily donate half of his supplies and then asked if Hyona would also donate. Hearing all this, she maintained her angelic personality, saying, "Of course, she will." But as we saw the real Hyona, she was clearly annoyed with this idea, thinking, "Is this perv crazy? There are so many people here, and despite that, he came and asked me in front of all of them?" Furious. She thought he was asking her among so many people because she had rejected him some time ago. To get out of this, she said she didn't have enough food even for herself, which started another argument. Soon, everyone calmed down again, and little by little, they decided what and how much to donate. Now, Aizen was happy with this, saying, "Since so many good people want to share their supplies, why don't they create a group and choose a leader to manage this supply and distribution?" So they created a committee named the Interim Emergency Committee. Han Feng, upon reading this, remembered that this committee was formed in his past life too, and that it was just a scheme to take supplies from other residents. It is now July 19th, the 5th day after the apocalypse began, and temperatures are already below -40 degrees. The central heating system no longer works due to the low temperatures, which have frozen everything. People were just sitting inside their homes, using all the blankets they had to keep warm. Some who had coal and wood were trying to warm themselves by burning them, trying to keep their kids warm. Everyone was thinking of ways to keep warm. It was the same thing that happened in his past life, and things only tended to get worse from now on. Of course, none of this applied to Han Feng, because he had almost infinite fuel and a cozy fireplace. He was comfortable drinking Coke and eating a strawberry juicy cake with a juicy strawberry on top in the warmth of his room. He was playing a zombie apocalypse game when suddenly someone called him, startling him. Han Feng picked up the phone while taking a sip of Coke, saying, "Hello?" with his mouth full of coke. The person asked if he was Mr. Han Feng, introducing himself as the owner of 1801. He said they were the person responsible for Block 8, their building, and notified him that they were going down to clear the streets in 20 minutes. He asked Han Feng to come down to the basement to help clear the snow. This made Han Feng furious, thinking, the snow is so heavy outside, is this guy blind? Forget clearing it. They won't even be able to go out. But he decided to go down and help anyway. Han Feng was wearing a very warm jacket and holding his shovel. He didn't want to cause trouble with the neighbors or unintentionally reveal his secret. He had to lower the possibility of them finding out about his secret to the lowest. But now the main problem was the snow, which had already covered almost the entire entrance. Noticing this, some people became furious since they had cleared the entrance yesterday. Some were really panicking, saying that at this rate, the entire building would get buried under snow. Finally, after some discussion, they decided to push the door open. Suddenly, someone pointed at Han Feng, saying they needed his help. Although he didn't want it to, Han Feng decided to assist. Han Feng stood with the group in front of the door and started to pull it open. After a lot of effort, the door finally budged slightly, and a blast of freezing cold air hit them. The sudden cold wind froze everyone in place. They couldn't move and could barely keep their eyes open because of the cold. Han Feng almost turned into a popsicle. He was sure that if they went out in this weather, they would all get serious frostbite. Everyone agreed with Han Feng's thoughts, shivering in the cold. They said only an idiot would try to clear the snow now. They would definitely get frostbite and die if they even attempted it, so it wasn't worth it. Suddenly, someone entered through the back door with a confident tone, saying that now that he was here, everything would be all right. Han Feng immediately recognized the voice. It was none other than Brother Li. He came strutting in like he was some big shot, taking a sip of his cigar and asking why everyone was acting like cowards. He said what they needed now was an imposing and strong attitude, not to act like 2-year-old sissy kids. While saying this, he stood in front of the open door with a huge pile of snow covering the entrance. The cold breeze was still coming in and everyone was shivering, but not Brother Li. He stood there confidently, saying he would remove the snow all by himself. Hearing this, everyone told him not to do it because it was very dangerous and he could die. They suggested waiting for the snowstorm to stop before trying to remove the snow again. But Brother Li was Brother Li. He just took a stronger drag on his cigarette and started running, attacking the snow as if it were his biggest enemy, shouting, "Ora, ora, ora, ora." He left everyone shocked, but after a while, Brother Li actually disappeared inside the hole he just dug. Everything was silent for a moment, but soon he started screaming uncontrollably for help. When they managed to pull him out, the poor guy had already turned into a popsicle. His face was pale, and he was barely breathing. After this incident, everyone decided to close the door again. Now Han Feng was sitting beside Brother Li, who was struggling to breathe. He was breathing heavily and shivering, and Han Feng was giving him CPR, trying to make his breath normal. Han Feng asked if Brother Li was feeling better now, but since there was no response, he started talking about finding the people who were taking care of first aid before deciding what to do about the snowstorm. This snowstorm was no longer something that could be resolved with just human power. Now in the parking lot, the committee organized everything and tried to distribute supplies. Aizen explained that the snow was too heavy, and once it slowed down, they would go out for more supplies. Until then, this parking lot would be the place where they would distribute what they had. Han Feng, on the other hand, thought this must be the man known as Jiang from the group, responsible for creating that committee. After taking a good look, he couldn't believe how this sweet-talking human was the one that spearheaded the establishment of that scam committee and screwed everyone over. Aizen thanked everyone for their support, saying he didn't expect so many owners to donate their resources like this. He made a grand speech about how everyone's generous donations would help more people in difficult situations, and that even a small contribution could save a starving kid. He thanked everyone again. Everyone started to murmur, saying that everyone faces difficulties at one point or another, so it's their duty as humans to help another human in times of crisis. However, Han Feng knew that everyone who was proud of Aizen now would bite their tongues in despair in the future. But it was none of his business. He was no hero to help everyone. Suddenly, Brother Li announced that he was going up because he was freezing. Han Feng said it was okay, but when he looked to the side, something caught his attention. He noticed a big, fluffy bunny ass. He saw a girl wearing bunny pants, holding some supplies and trying to help the people who needed first aid. And boy, oh boy, Han Feng's tractor got started seeing her bunny tail wiggling with the slightest of her movements. Although he didn't want to think this way, he couldn't stop thinking, is that bunny tail plugged into... Well, Han Feng was daydreaming, enjoying watching the goddess at work, when he noticed she was trying to pass through some people. She seemed quite clumsy, bumping into everyone while apologizing. Suddenly, she lost her balance and was about to fall, but she was caught by our hero, Han Feng. He asked, "Are you okay?" On the other hand, she was just closing her eyes, accepting her fate of falling down. But as she opened her eyes and said thanks, she noticed Han Feng's face. The first thing she asked was how Han Feng's leg was. She really was a goddess. While looking at Han Feng's leg, she noticed it looked like it was healed. Han Feng got a little panicked, thinking about what to say. Han Feng, still panicked, tried to make an excuse, saying, for some reason, since childhood, his recovery time is much faster than normal people's, and he can recover from common injuries in just a few days. He started to fumble, not knowing what to say, but as she was a naive girl, she stared at Han Feng for some time, making him more stressed. Then suddenly, with admiration, she started to cheer for Han Feng, saying he was awesome, like Superman, with sparkling eyes. Han Feng was glad she was airheaded. Then Han Feng said he would help her move the supplies, but she tried to explain that the supplies were quite heavy and she was fine. Han Feng insisted, explaining that he was a man and, despite how he looked, he was strong. She could take this as a thanks for helping him bandage his broken leg. She said if he put it that way, she had no other choice. So, she handed the supplies to Han Feng. As soon as she did, Han Feng felt like he was lifting 100 kilos of weight. His breath almost gave out because of the weight. He was shocked, struggling and shaking while walking. Han Feng asked her what was inside the boxes, and she, with her polite tone, explained that they were mainly medical supplies she was going to donate to the people in need. Then, maintaining her polite tone and the cutest face Han Feng had ever seen, she said, "If it's too heavy, you don't have to push it. I can carry them, it's okay." But after seeing her smile, Han Feng's adrenaline rushed, and he started to not feel any pain. He was able to lift the weight with no issue. Then she said, "Han Feng, don't push yourself. I'm actually much stronger than most guys." Han Feng, still in a daze, asked, "Do you go to the gym or something?" With a little sad face, she was about to say something but paused mid-sentence. She looked like she had a rough past that she was not willing to talk about yet. Han Feng, dripping in love, also noticed she was hiding something. The next moment she apologized, saying she was really sorry. There was a reason she was stronger than most men, but she couldn't explain it clearly. But Han Feng was not interested in her story. He was just in awe of her cuteness. Then she said she still didn't know Han Feng's name. Still blushing, Han Feng introduced himself, saying his name was Han Feng. She, with another heart-piercing cute smile, introduced herself, saying her name was Jin Shui, and it was nice to meet him. At that moment, Han Feng felt like he was in heaven. Completely captivated by the girl, Han Feng was left speechless. Suddenly, Jin asked what he did for work. Han Feng, a little embarrassed, said he was unemployed, which she found fantastic. Then she stumbled again and bumped into a person, losing her balance. She was about to fall, but this time, she used Han Feng as support. While taking support, her mommy milkers touched Han Feng's shoulder. Although they were both wearing thick clothes, Han Feng could feel the softness, making him blush even more. Once again, his tractor was just about to start when she suddenly pulled back and apologized. Han Feng said it was okay, but inside, he was thinking she could do this many times. Well, someone decided to be an Ultramax Pro Giga Chad, and here we are. That's why men will be men. Suddenly, an unpleasant voice messed up Han Feng's mood. It was none other than the greatest witch, Hyona. She greeted Han Feng and asked why he didn't tell her he was here so they could come together. Then she immediately came close to Han Feng and grabbed his arm, pressing her mommy milkers against him. With a seductive tone, she asked, "Who is that girl?" Seeing this, Jin thought Hyona was Han Feng's girlfriend, so she blushingly left, taking the supplies Han Feng was carrying like they were nothing. She said, "Han Feng and Hyona, enjoy and continue chatting. I'll go do my job," and thanked Han Feng for his help before leaving. As Jin continued to run, carrying the supplies, Han Feng, furious inside, asked Hyona why she was here. Hyona explained that she came down to receive supplies, but Han Feng hadn't contacted or replied to any of her messages, so she was really worried, thinking something might have happened to him. She was glad he was okay. Han Feng decided to calm down and politely replied that he was just about to reply to her message. But Hyona, with a devilish cute smile, said, "Han Feng is a big liar." She clearly saw him chatting with that lady for quite a while, and Han Feng seemed happy. Then she asked Han Feng if he had any spare food supplies at his home since she had almost run out. Could he share some and help her out? Hearing this, Han Feng smirked and started to laugh mischievously. He said he didn't have much food left, but could share all he had if she replied to the message he sent a few days ago. The message was about Han Feng wanting to use his key in Hyona's lock. Suddenly, in a romantic way, Han Feng grabbed Hyona in his shoulder and asked if she wanted to come to his place and accompany him for a few days. Hyona was left speechless. It took her some time to process how this good-for-nothing loser was trying to flirt with her. She came to her senses and tried to dodge the question, acting all innocent and pure, saying if Han Feng wanted to spend time with her and chat all day, she was available. They could chat all they wanted here or on the phone. Maintaining his Chad attitude, Han Feng turned back, yawning and acting bored. He said, "You don't look any fun to me, and we're not on the same track, so I'm going back." This left Hyona speechless and bewildered. Well, Han Feng is only a giga Chad in front of Hyona. But before Han Feng could leave, Hyona grabbed him from behind, asking him to wait. With a sad face, she once again started her little act, saying she felt like Han Feng had changed recently. She continued, saying he should know she has always been serious about her feelings. Then, making an innocent and pathetic face, she said she didn't want people to think she was with Han Feng just because he was rich. She asked if Han Feng could give her some more time, once again trying to seduce our boy. So, maintaining his little act, Han Feng acted like he was shy and blushing, trying to look like he was in love with Hyona. But inside, he was really pissed. He didn't want to be near her for even 1 second. He had already died once because of this witch's act, and right now, he really wanted to tear off her ugly mask, but he didn't have any evidence. He also didn't know about the man who smashed his head, and then started smashing Hyona right in front of him when he was dying. But suddenly, he thought of something brilliant. He should just do as it was done in his past life and let Hyona bring the man to him again. This time, he would be prepared. So looking at her, Han Feng said he was just teasing her all this time. This left Hyona impressed with his response. Excited, Han Feng grabbed Hyona, saying he would definitely give his supplies to her. He promised to deliver his food supply to her room tomorrow. Hyona, hearing this, got really happy, saying Han Feng was the best. Turning around while waving goodbye, she said she would go home and wait for him eagerly. Our Giga Chad simply told her to be careful not to catch a cold, but as soon as she completely turned around, she revealed her witch personality with an evil smirk, thinking she had caught a big fish. On the other hand, Han Feng was also smirking. He was extremely happy, thinking about how he would take his sweet little revenge. The day passed, and the cold was more extreme than yesterday. The storm didn't stop but grew more fierce. Han Feng's phone continued to ring with Hyona's messages. She was asking how Han Feng was doing, and when he was going to deliver the food supplies he promised 2 days ago. Another message came asking why Han Feng was ignoring her and not replying to her messages. But our boy, well, his phone was lying beside him while he was enjoying a mouth-watering herb rice bowl with tender chicken breast. While everyone outside was dying of cold, the temperature in Han Feng's place was so high that he was drinking a cold drink with ice and enjoying his dish. As he took a bite of his meat, it almost melted in his mouth. He felt like he was in heaven. The temperature was just perfect with the cold drink and the warm meat and rice. While eating his meat, Han Feng explained, the numerous experiments over the past few days have confirmed 2 things for him. First, meat cannot grow indefinitely. No matter how much he tried, he was unable to make a full piece of meat grow any bigger. Han Feng had a flashback of when he was experimenting with meat growth and discovered that meat has a natural limit to its growth. It cannot expand endlessly. Second, he can make meat grow infinitely if certain criteria are met. Holding a piece of meat with chopsticks, Han Feng explained, previously he would use half of the harvested soybeans to grow new seedlings while the other half was consumed. This method ensured a continuous supply of soybeans. Now, even though he couldn't make the meat grow bigger, he discovered something. When he cut the meat into 2 pieces and then tried to grow them, the meat grew back to its original form into 1 full piece. So using this formula, he will have an infinite supply of soybeans and meat. Feeling like a genius, Han Feng was happy that with this method, he would never go hungry or run out of food supplies. Meanwhile, on the TV, the news reporter said, "Today is August 2nd, the 19th day of the snowstorm. I'm currently in the Maldives, 78 kilometers from the equator, and the average temperature here has already dropped to minus 42 degrees. The entire island is almost buried under snow, and seawater is freezing at such a fast speed that it can be seen with the naked eye. Experts have detected that the thickness of the ice layer has already reached 55 centimeters, and the current disastrous situation is almost the same in every country near the equator. Han Feng, in his pajamas, was holding a glass of red wine, taking small sips. He said, "Haha, the reality is far worse than what the media has reported." Suddenly, a shock wave startled him. It felt like a huge earthquake. The glass of wine shattered in his hand, spilling the contents. Han Feng immediately pushed back the curtain and stood by the window, looking out at the city, which was in chaos. Explosions could be seen in the distance. This was the 7th explosion in the past few days. What on earth is happening outside? Han Feng thought. But he had nothing to worry about, as he had infinite supplies, and on top of that, his room was fortified. Just then, a huge vibrating noise startled Han Feng. As he gazed up at the sky through the window, he saw multiple military helicopters flying. Han Feng was surprised as well as amused. It was his first time seeing military helicopters. He exclaimed, "Whoa, so many military helicopters." Although Han Feng was living a luxurious life, the same couldn't be said for the outside. Pulling the curtain back, Han Feng thought about how the war outside had caused a huge commotion among the residents. In the underground parking, residents were trading goods and supplies, but they were clearly not very happy. They were arguing for some reason. Some people were extorting huge amounts of money in return for supplies. Even the people who had donated half their supplies were being charged exorbitant amounts to get some supplies back. Because of this, a fight broke out, and people were clearly not happy. A man in a white jacket grabbed a man in a blue jacket, saying, "The guy with glasses," indicating Aizen, said all the supplies are free, so why are they charging money? He was furious. Meanwhile, Aizen, with a group of people and a clipboard, was distributing supplies, so it turned out only Aizen was giving free supplies. And some people taking advantage of this situation was selling their own supplies on high price. On the other hand, Han Feng also decided to come down. Although he was wearing the warmest coat, the cold air was enough to make him sneeze. It wasn't more than a few minutes after he came down that he started to look visibly cold, with a runny nose and chattering teeth. He exclaimed, "It's way too cold." As he walked further, he saw a line of people waiting for supplies. Han Feng thought, if it weren't for the need to gather information, he wouldn't have come down here. In the background, people were shouting, "Don't cut in line!" And who cut in line? They were just too panicked and furious. Han Feng recalled, before he was reborn, there was already violence happening in this district. If he is not mistaken, it had something to do with these people. He remembered chaotic scenes of people fighting. But the strange thing was they were really distributing supplies, not cheating the residents out of them. What's going on here? He wondered. Han Feng decided to find out the real situation first. The panel showed a view of the chaotic distribution area from above, with people gathered around piles of supplies. As Han Feng walked through the crowded area in the underground parking lot, he thought, there are so many people in need. He looked towards a distribution point. A person in the line said he handed over several boxes of supplies at the beginning, and now he only get this much food. But Aizen, with a polite tone, explained, everyone gets an equal share. The fat man, frustrated, held out some supplies and exclaimed, "Give me back the supplies I donated." But Aizen, still polite and smiling, replied, he is sorry, but he can't return the supplies. Aizen continued, saying, the disaster is ongoing and he hoped the fatso think of the bigger picture. The frustrated man responded, who knows how long this disaster will last? And he just want my supplies back. But at this point, people already saw Aizen as their savior. People in the crowd reacted to the frustrated man, saying, stop causing trouble. Aizen said you will be compensated. Don't he have any trust in him? Another added, have some shame. He just want more supplies. The crowd grew more agitated. Someone yelled for the man to take his share and leave since everyone was waiting for food. Another voice told him not to embarrass himself because supplies given out wouldn't be returned. And finally, someone shouted, hurry up, you pig! Han Feng observed the scene with a slight smirk, thinking, given the current situation, there's no way they'll let you take the supplies back. He continued to watch the crowd, thinking, those who put themselves on a moral high ground and criticize those who donate more, they really have no shame. Just then, another voice agreed with Han Feng, saying they really had no shame. It was none other than Brother Li. Brother Li, with a tired expression, had raised his hand and greeted Han Feng. Han Feng had responded with a smile, remarking how it had been a long time since they had last seen each other. Brother Li had laughed, mentioning that he was still surviving. Brother Li had said he was feeling a bit weak and anxious. Han Feng had asked if he was really okay with that. Brother Li had explained that he had been surviving on water and minimal food for the past few days. His stomach had grumbled loudly, and Han Feng, hearing this, had been shocked. Han Feng had asked if he really had no supplies left since the other day. Brother Lee had told him he collected a large amount of supplies. Brother Lee had explained that he had donated most of his supplies to the committee to help the neighbors back then. He had continued, saying that the stored food at home had run out and the disaster was still ongoing. When he had come back to the committee to ask for more supplies, they had denied him, and there he was. Brother Lee had been so weak that his skin was starting to shrink. He had continued, saying if he had known things would turn out like this, he wouldn't have given any supplies. Now, even if he made a scene to ask for his supplies back, people would start causing a commotion. Han Feng had listened to Brother Lee curiously. Then, with a grin, he had called out to Brother Lee, who had looked at him, curious. Han Feng had put his arm around Brother Lee and asked if he could help him with something. Brother Lee had responded, wondering what it was. Then Han Feng explained that he wanted Brother Lee to do something for him, and in return, he would give Brother Lee 4 packets of instant noodles. This had shocked Brother Lee. He had asked if Han Feng was really telling the truth. Han Feng had nodded, and then Brother Lee had started to cry, saying he would never forget Han Feng's kindness. Han Feng had reassured him, saying there was no need to be so polite between brothers. Brother Lee grabbed Han Feng's shoulder, reassuring him not to worry. Still crying with joy, Brother Lee promised that the small request was on him. Han Feng thanked Brother Lee, mentioning that he could visit his house later to collect the food. Brother Lee agreed, saying he would finish his job of gathering information first, then come back for the supplies. With that, Brother Lee left. Han Feng, on the other hand, thought to himself that with a few packs of instant noodles and sausages, he would no longer need to personally gather information. Although Han Feng felt a bit guilty about taking advantage of Brother Lee, he thought that being comfortable at home, eating good food, and playing games was more important. But just then, someone called out to Han Feng, catching his attention. As he turned back, a flying slap came toward him. A woman in a red coat appeared and slapped Han Feng. It was none other than the witch Hyona finally showing her true colors. Han Feng was taken aback, wondering what had happened. The woman expressed her disappointment in him, saying Han Feng had really disappointed her too much.